Hi, my name is Claire Luxton and I'm a multidisciplinary artist. Today we are in my newly renovated studio in an old Victorian warehouse in East Sussex, and I would love to show you around. So it really started out as a complete shell. When I first got the space, it was half the size. So there was just a complete wall here, and it was just the raw wood. There were no windows, wasn't painted. And when I'd originally inquired about the studio space, I'd asked for a double unit, but these spaces didn't exist. So we knew it was something that we were gonna work on together to build kind of like a dream studio space for me at the minute, because I'm multidisciplinary. I need different areas that can function differently. So over the past month, I would say, we have been working on this renovation, which involved knocking through, building a double height space, putting in windows, painting, ordering furniture. So it's been a real exciting time and transformational process. For me, because I work quite large scale, so as well as photography, I work on quite big sculptural pieces, and even my photography is printed really large scale. For me, I need a space which I can occupy that can reflect my personality, which can reflect my brand as an artist, but also that is a really versatile space for me to be able to make and work on my practice. So this was something that was really exciting to be able to bring to life. How I'm using the space, I mean, this is a new space to me, so I'm readjusting and learning to how the space functions for me. But typically, the first port of call is coming to the office area in the morning. This is kind of the hub. This is where all the kind of organizational editing, it's where I kind of organize my world from. I really love this wall. It's the first time I've done a curated wall, and it's just, I guess it's like an accomplishment wall really. Pieces of media that I've either been covered in, magazines that I've done the covers of. I had all of these kind of like pieces of media in a cupboard, and I just thought it was such a shame not to be able to actually see them. Typically after that, it will be either shooting, which is predominantly done in this area. This space would be quite empty, so I'd be able to set up all of my lighting. This is where I would be shooting if I was working on a new photography piece for the day. But also at the minute, I've been working on a lot of larger scale pieces, so that's where this side of the space would come into it. So as I mentioned previously, I do a lot of sculpture and painting. I also work a lot with resin as well. So I need this space to be functional and to be able to transform. So as we have it set up today, it's obviously a lot more stylized, and I've set it up as if I was having a function or an event. Sometimes I will invite collectors or investors down. However, when I'm in the thick of it, this is where, you know, everything is able to move and transform. I would use the floor space to be able to work on a new piece and diamond dust this in the same way that I've hand finished that. So when I'm diamond dusting a piece, it gets a complete layer of resin, and then I hand embellish it with diamond dust, which is lethally sharp but creates this beautiful effect. And I kind of love that juxtaposition between something that's quite, well, not deadly, but you know, it's sharp and has a cutting edge to it, but looks beautiful. So it's kind of like a Venus flytrap in a way. So when I was first designing the space, I actually really wanted to kind of bring nature inside. Nature is a massive part of my practice and my process, and I wanted to go for an accent wall on the tongue and groove. So this is like the original tongue and groove of the Victorian warehouse. So that's green 05, and it's kind of like a dusky olive green, which I just loved the richness. But then in this space, when I wanted to, you know, progress things on, I wanted there to be a transition but also complementary to each other. So the first thing I noticed was when you look out the windows, you have the raw bark of the trees, and obviously when autumn comes, a lot of the trees out there aren't evergreen, so they lose their leaves. So you have this kind of transitional period between the spaces, but also between the outdoors. So this is in beige 02, and I wanted there to be the two colours that you predominantly see outside. So you have the trees and you have the raw wood. And then in here, because it is going to be more of a gallery and wet space, I wanted a really clean, bright white. So I went for white 01. And I think it really allows there to be more light and a really great flow and transition between the two spaces. My thought process and inspiration has been a real journey for me. I'm, as I've mentioned before, super influenced by nature. I'm very interested in our environment and our relationship as humans with nature, sort of the dynamic between our vulnerability and nature's vulnerability, and I feel like that's become more prevalent in the last 12 months as well. I think we've all seen that we're a lot more vulnerable than maybe we thought as invincible human beings. But I've always been interested in that dynamic between us as humans and that of nature. But I feel like I have like a very cinematic brain, so I think storytelling is very evident within my work and emotional play. So for me, I'm more inspired by the energy and emotion and materials of things, and that story and that journey that the viewer and myself can go on. So something really exciting that I worked on recently was a big collaboration with Wedgwood that was featured in Harper's Bazaar, and it was a massive 3 metre by 6 metre floral sculpture which involved shooting live animals here in the studio as well. So it was originally a sculpture, and then I've turned it into a wall mural. So I photographed all of the different elements and stitched them together, but I can explain this better at the wall, so let me go and show you. So this is Wonderlust. This is the finished artwork, which was a collaboration with Wedgwood, which was inspired by their Wonderlust collection. So in the space we had Popple Guy, the parrot. Popple Guy was flying around in the rafters, creating a lot of excitement on the day. We also have poison dart frogs. They're absolutely tiny, tiny in real life. So this whole floral sculpture I built within the studio space and then photographed and cut down into, I think it was around 30 to 40 tiny images, which I then stitched together to create the larger mural. So it's really exciting that this is actually in the space and that I'm able to show it to you today. But when I'm making something like this, it involves a lot of fresh botanicals, and I have some fresh botanicals in the studio today, so I thought I would show you a little bit of that process. So I have to go down to the wholesale florist. I typically go to one in Brighton actually, and hand pick or hand order all of the different botanicals. I like to go for things that are super sculptural, and obviously when I'm creating my floral scapes, they're quite abstract. It's not necessarily based on botanicals that you would normally see together collectively in real life, but I want to create a fantasy and an energy, and especially when you're shooting with live animals as well, it really brings and ties everything together. So I get all of my florals and then I'll bring them into the studio space, into the wet space, and start to work on them. So obviously I don't normally paint like this, so I'm gonna slip out of these, literally, put on my paint splattered Birkenstocks and get into another variation on a green jumpsuit, but one that's for painting and getting messy in. So normally when I'm setting up for a self-portrait shoot, it takes a lot of time, because obviously once I'm in hair and makeup with props behind the camera, I need to then switch into character or switch into a role or a certain mode. So I spend a lot of time setting up the lighting, the backdrops, all of the different props. at this stage, yeah, I'll spend a few hours just playing around with setup lighting, and I use my trusted wireless remote to be able to get the shots. So normally I'll spend time conditioning all of the different flowers. You would strip the leaves off, cut the stems at an angle, which gives you a larger surface area for water and nutrients to be absorbed, and just kind of make sure everything's in good condition, in good nick. So yeah, it's just to prepare the flowers, prepare the plants, especially if I'm going to be like sculpting a massive sculpture with them or bringing in different elements into a photo shoot. They all need to be prepared. So this is the diamond dust in its kind of raw form. So all of these pieces are printed onto aluminium. It's then kind of overlaid with acrylic glass. And then when I then get it back from the printers, once it's been mounted onto the aluminium, I then hand finish each piece with a layer of resin and then a layer of the diamond dust. So on one of my other pieces, I'm just going to do a test corner to see how the diamond dust will look on it before I would apply the resin. And when the diamond dust is mixed with the resin, it goes more translucent, so it kind of picks up the pigments that are underneath, as you can see in this one. And ultimately, I think when you're working with materials, one of the most important things I've found within my practice is to play and experiment, and to not shut down any ideas before you've branched out into them, because you never know, often the mistakes are what lead to really interesting and thought-provoking outcomes that build a lot of conversation around your practice. So it's really interesting to see how the things you thought wouldn't work ultimately do.